Jesus, I look like a freaking roadie. But, yeah, regardless of that, yes. This thing's been out for 4 years. That is insane. And yes, well, when this thing was first coming out, people were worried. People were saying, will it succeed or won't it? I mean, because, the Wii was a disaster and the Wii was a freaking great seller, but people were worried that, that Nintendo's going to keep going the whole gimmick thing, and they did with the Wii U, and they kept going here. But thankfully, the gimmick here worked so perfectly. I mean, a handheld console hybrid was exactly what the world needed, and this thing is incredible. And after 4 years, we're finally getting a upgraded redesign. Yes, the Nintendo Switch Lite exists, but that was a downgrade. This is an upgrade. And personally, I'm a little worried because while every other freaking company out there, whether it be Sega, PlayStation, or Xbox, they all have upgraded some of their consoles in one way or another, and they've all been freaking slam dunks. But in the case of Nintendo, that's not very true, is it? Because they've not only screwed up every single redesign they've done for consoles, but they've added on to it by making some of them even worse than the redesign before. Perfect example, Sony. PlayStation 1 was phenomenal, then we had a PS1, a slimmer version. This thing was great and it ran just like the PS1. Everything fit into a smaller box. Even more impressive, the PS2. This big ass fat box was trimmed down into this tiny, little, slim, beautiful, sleek design, and everything was perfect in it. I mean, certain revisions did, knock off some PS1, like backwards compatibility. It was still there, but instead of it being hardware, it was actually emulation. Although, unless you were really, really looking for it, nobody noticed. And the same with the PS3, the PS3 Slim, and the PS4, and the PS4 Slim, and then eventually the PS4 Pro. Like, this was the upgrade. This was the upgrade path. This is the better version. And whereas, even I'll go back, like, the Xbox never had a real redesign. The 360 definitely needed a redesign because that was a horrible, horrible thing in the beginning. And thankfully the Slim was a, good piece of tech. This second version was kind of weird, whatever. And the Xbox One, same thing. We had the Xbox One S, and then we had the Xbox One X. And again, this is a big improvement over the VCR box that was originally given to us. But now we go to Nintendo, and here is where their track record for consoles is pretty abysmal. Let's start from the beginning. First and foremost, the NES. NES Top Loader, or also referred to as the NES 101, New Style NES, or the NES 2 in some people's eyes. And yeah, this thing looks sleek as hell. This thing is freaking really, really cool. And honestly, yeah, I like the controllers. I don't actually own one, but I definitely held one in my hand at a game store. And yeah, they definitely took some inspiration from obviously the SNES controller. And it does feel kind of great, even though the button placement's a little off. But they had to ruin it with one single thing. There's no AV out. It is only RF. And if you don't know what RF is, that is the little thing in the back of your TV that you're wondering what the hell connects to that, kids. There used to be cable that connected to that, and back then, seriously, I don't need to explain all this shit. All you gotta look up is channel 3 or channel 4, and shitty quality. I'm talking the shittiest of the shitty. And yes, there do exist mods out there, and there do actually exist actual freaking modified from Nintendo themselves versions of this console that have AV out. But they're so rare or expensive that you're better off just getting a normal, freaking toaster NES. But yeah, that was the downgrade. What about the upgrade? Technically, NES never really got one. The Famicom did in the NES Disk System, but while that was successful over in Japan, it was never successful enough to come over here. So, this one's weird. It is a good positive, but there was a lot of issues in this, and thankfully, in the case of, the disk system failing, a lot of the games that were released on that in the Famicom side, thankfully came over for the NES side over here, on cartridge. So, this is them, dipping their toe in the water, and this is not 100% a mess up, but we didn't actually experience this one, so I'm not going to count this one fully. But yes, the Famicom disk system was essentially their first upgrade path in any console, and it was okay. But now moving on to the SNES, this one is kind of a travesty in Nintendo's eyes. Now, first up, let's talk about the downgrade. The SNES Junior, very similar to Top Loader, this was just a console, just pretty much made to look smaller and more compact. This thing is great, it has AV out, but they took out RGB, which was a great feature put into the SNES. And while this may not affect everyone, there's still a point against it. But let's look at the upgrade. And here it is! Do you see it? The Nintendo Oh wait, no, this is called the Sony PlayStation. This is why I referred to it as a travesty earlier, because the PlayStation, if you don't know, was originally supposed to be a Nintendo SNES that played discs. But Nintendo butchered that deal so badly that in the end, PlayStation decided to go, screw you, we're gonna make our own console, we're gonna outsell the shit out of you guys, and you're gonna be stuck with one of your biggest franchises, two of your biggest franchises, Mario and Zelda, on one of the worst consoles ever made, the CDI. So technically, this is not an upgrade, but a failed upgrade that didn't even see the market officially with a Nintendo freaking logo on it. Instead, it's called the Sony PlayStation. And yeah, that's the beginning of their horrible path down the whole upgrade thing. So let's move on to the next thing. And this one, again, follows the very same logic as the last two, but at least it wasn't, a travesty like the PlayStation. Nintendo 64, which the upgrade was Nintendo 64 DD. And yes, this is the upgrade. I'm not referring to the fantastic consoles which all have slightly better AV. That's great and everything. I'm talking about fully an upgraded 64, which is just an add-on. In this case, was the DD. Very similar to the Famicom disk system. This thing was just an add-on. You could just play more memory-intensive games. And this thing failed faster and harder than the Famicom disk system. But it was nowhere near as bad as the deal with the PlayStation. So this, again, was another upgrade failure, but at least this one didn't leave a huge scar like the last one did. Moving on, the GameCube. Now this is debatably my favorite Nintendo console, but this one technically never got an actual upgrade because sadly it wasn't a huge seller like the other consoles. It was essentially considered a failure by some. I don't know who the hell it really considered a failure to. To me, I love it. But yeah, this thing did not sell too well to the point where in a matter of years, they moved on to the next best thing. But if you are going to split hairs, I guess the Panasonic Q would be considered an upgrade, even though it was very, very expensive and, it was very, very rare to get your hands on. It does play DVDs, which honestly was a huge thing against the GameCube when it came out. PS2 and Xbox could play DVDs. This thing couldn't. So that is an upgrade. It's just a very hard one to find. It's very expensive, and if you manage to find one that's not working, it's a pain in the ass to fix. So another upgrade that didn't really see, just a good light. It was just kind of another failure. Now moving on to the Wii, and this one, while nowhere near as bad as the SNES, is their next horrible upgrade path, and mostly because of hardware. Now look, I love the Wii. I freaking waited outside of a freaking GameStop to get a Wii. Freaking day one. Didn't get it, that pissed me off, but I still bought it day one. I found it in another place. It was freaking awesome. It was fun. I like freaking Twilight Princess on the Wii. Not anymore now that I've played the other versions, but I still loved the Wii, and I still enjoy the Wii to this day. Mostly because of the GameCube backwards compatibility. And yes, this was the biggest selling feature for me. Not only was it cool to play all my GameCube games that I had on it, but the fact is, and this is more of a personal touch to me, I got my GameCube stolen. So, freaking being able to play all the games I already owned was a great plus to me because, again, this is a personal touch, but this was a huge deal for me because I could just play my games again. Well, let's moving on to the upgrades. Now that we had two redesigns, the first one being the RVL 101, they sold this as just any other Wii, and they kind of just neglected to point out the fact that this thing lacked GameCube compatibility. I mean, all the slots on top were just gone, it was now just a closed off surface, and if you put any GameCube games in it, they just wouldn't read. So this was kind of a dick move because it was still being advertised as a normal Wii. And it was essentially, when it came out, it was like, oh, this is a cheaper version, a cheaper variant. The Wii, it's a budget release, and they did not explain it perfectly enough to go, this is the new Wii, we cut some shit out. Instead, it was just, hey, we got a freaking price drop. There's a reason why I got a price drop. But that's not even the worst one. The next revision, which in many other respects, when you put the word mini or slim at the end of your console, should be seen as an upgrade. This thing was not an upgrade. And I'm of course referring to the Wii Mini. The RVL 201. Now this is a smaller version of the Wii, which again would be great in the same sense as like a PS3 Slim or an Xbox One S, which, you know, either was the same thing, just more compact, or in the sense of Xbox One S, was an upgraded version. But no. In this case, they took out so many things in this thing that it's kind of embarrassing to even call it a Wii, because some of the biggest features that made the Wii shine are gone. Right off the bat, there's lack of game creep support. I mean, that was expected since the last one didn't have it, but it removed Wi-Fi, deleting a whole portion of the Wii success, the eShop and Virtual Console. No SD card slot, so for you hackers out there, this is not the one you want to pick up. And to top it all off, it removed 480p, so no component. And the best part about all this was bundled, at least from the ones that I've seen, with Mario Kart Wii, a game that is great on its own, a great, you know, multiplayer, couch multiplayer game, but it was the biggest part of that game that, you know, kept it going for years and years was the freaking online community. And this thing couldn't connect to it. I mean, out of all the things they took out, that was the biggest slap in the face. Oh, I mean, yes, it did have a top loader. Essentially, you know, you just pop it open, put the disk drive, you know, less likely to fail like the freaking disk drive in the Wii. But that's it. Borderline, do not get the Wii Mini. The thing is a piece of garbage. It is not a Wii in any sense of, well, what made the Wii great in the first place. And now finally we've reached the predecessor of the Switch, the Wii U. And yeah, this thing crashed and burned so quickly that they didn't have a chance to even think of an upgrade. I mean, if you're going to really, you know, think about it hard and go, but technically the Switch is the upgrade, because any game that's worth its salt on that is now on here. Now, while I can see that, it's not an upgrade because you can't play at least physical, you know, discs from that thing onto this thing. And I mean, it was the smarter move. I mean, the Switch is phenomenal, and it's essentially this thing fully realized in the best way possible, because this whole portable thing, it should have just been 100% portable like this. And yes, this thing is great. But now we're moving on to the upgrade path. Now, I will mention the Switch Lite because this thing is a downgrade, but it is a perfectly fine option due to the fact that it's a Switch, just without removable controllers, and you can't play it on a TV. Now, when people say, oh, is there any way of playing my Switch Lite on the TV? Yeah, you get yourself the Switch. Yes, it's $100 cheaper, but I've never had any, you know, intention to buy a Lite. I mean, I'll buy one if I find one for dirt cheap, because I'm a filthy collector, but that's not enough reason to go out and buy one full price. I mean, the Switch has the versatility of a handheld and a freaking console. And now, thinking about the upgrade path, the Switch Pro sounds like a great idea. I mean, being able to, you know, up-res your games to 4K on a screen, and, you know, the screen being bigger on this thing, it'll still be 720p, but have an OLED screen, and my god, I love OLED screens. I mean, geez, the amount of times I've freaking praised OLED screens on this freaking channel, whether it be on the Vita or the freaking Quest 1, it is so enticing. But again, the concern comes up with, what if they mess it up? What if something goes wrong? Nintendo just has a tendency to ruin these things. And hey, it might be great. But yeah, they don't have that good of a track record. Unless, and here's the big, you know, argument against this. They've done badly on their consoles. But you know what they haven't done badly on? Well, their handhelds. Now, let's breeze through this because, Jesus Christ, these videos are getting long enough. The Game Boy freaking Pocket, and the Game Boy Light. These were utter perfection. These were great upgrades. Sadly, the Light never came out in America, but these were still phenomenal. And technically speaking, at least in the eyes of Nintendo, the Game Boy Color is also just an upgraded Game Boy. I like to think of it as its own console due to the fact that it has its own, you know, library of games. But that's not going to be the first time they do this shit with, handhelds, so fine. It's an upgrade. But yeah, moving on to obviously the one I just showed you, the Game Boy Advance. Now, yes, I love the Game Boy Advance's original design, but the SP's perfect. And you may be wondering, why does it have a pink one? Because this is the best version of the SP. They even upgraded the upgrade, and the AGS 101, not just the 101, AGS 101 model is perfection, not because it contains a smaller form factor of the SP, but it has one hell of a screen. See how bright that is? That's excellent. But yeah, it was perfection. And Nintendo, just not knowing how to upgrade stuff and just leaving it well enough alone, they kept going. Moving on to the Game Boy Micro. Now this is interesting because, while I don't own one, I really do want one. It lost all Game Boy compatibility prior. It can't play Game Boy games, can't play Game Boy Color games, but the small, compact size and just how cool they look, the customizable faceplates, this thing's a niche product. It is just a niche product. But again, I'm a filthy collector, so this is definitely something that definitely caught my eye. It's not necessarily an upgrade, it definitely came out after the DS, so this is just a cool little thing. But yes, now moving on to the DS. This is not a Game Boy. This is now a whole brand new line of consoles. And yeah, as much as I did love this bulky piece of shit back then, it's a bulky piece of shit. In the sense that when you compare it to its successor, oh yeah, this is easily one of the best handhelds ever made, and it is perfect in the hands. I mean, just the clicky buttons, everything about this thing was perfection, and it contained everything that previous DS had, and honestly, it is perfect. Now, the next upgrade, which the DSi, that took out freaking Game Boy Advance. I mean, one of the biggest reasons I love this thing is because you can play Game Boy Advance games, but yeah, they took that out in the DSi. I never wanted one for that reason, but it does have DSiWare games, I mean, exclusive games, even though you can't really buy those anymore. Regardless, going back to Nintendo not knowing how to just stop when they're ahead. But hey, it's not a dumpster fire like their console, upgrades. But again, moving on. Finally, with their last official handheld, the 3DS. Now, I used to have an old piano black original 3DS, and that thing was great. Loved it, phenomenal, felt great in the hands, felt like a freaking DS Lite, that's why I freaking absolutely loved it. But yeah, I had to upgrade. And this is perfect because this is the perfect example of, well, them knowing how to just upgrade. Again, they kind of messed it up again, but regardless, 3DS. Then the 3DS XL. Then the new 3DS, and the new 3DS XL. And this thing is, to me, my favorite handheld in many respects. I mean, yes, I love the Vita. I've always said that stuff, but it's always neck and neck with this thing. Or, again, I'll get to that. But yeah, the only downside of the new 3DS XL is the fact that they try to do this whole exclusive games thing. Thankfully that failed, and all these games you can now buy on the Switch. But it was still an interesting thing to do. And hopefully this is a good lesson to them to stop doing this shit. But they could do it with the Switch Pro, that's always the issue. But regardless, once again, they couldn't stop, so they kept going with the 2DS, which is a great budget console. So it is down, and this is what it comes down. It's a downgrade, so I really shouldn't include them that much because the 2DS, technically it's not just, it's a number less. No, they actually stripped features, but it was far cheaper. And then the 2DS XL, which is, I don't like the phone screen thing, so I never bothered to buy one. I would love to get one of either the Zelda one or the Pokemon one, but it's literally just the collector's piece at that point. I just don't care for it. Practical wise, I like the 3D. Yeah, I'm a heathen for even saying that, but yes, I'm a person who actually loved the 3D freaking features in the console. A 3DS without that doesn't really interest me. So yeah, probably wondering, what the hell are you talking about? Well, I mean, I just wanted to talk about Nintendo's past history, with the freaking upgrades. I mean, on the handheld side, they've done a great job. I mean, they've done just gangbusters. I mean, seriously, if you're going to buy any one of these consoles, get these variants. The AGS 101, the DS Lite, or the new 3DS XL, because it is the best of everything on their respective consoles. But on the downside, well, they're consoles upgrades. And yeah, they've been just either been never released over here or horrible situations. Not horrible for us, the consumer, but for them, they fucked up royally. But yeah, besides that, the whole point of this video was just talking about this thing, the Switch. And my main concern is, well, this is a hybrid. Which way are they going to go with this? Are they going to go on the handheld side, or are they going to go on the freaking console side? Because they could, I mean, yes, 4K up-resing and an OLED screen are freaking great. I would love that. That'd be perfect. But then also they could mess it up by doing the whole, Nintendo 3DS thing. You're like, oh, there's exclusive games for the Super. Like, you just make a brand new console at that point. You're just locking out more people, and just do what the Wii did. It's obviously backwards compatible. That's freaking great. But just pick a lane, Nintendo. Either you're gonna upgrade or you're gonna make a new console. Just decide on one of those, because you're gonna just convolute the market, and you've done that so many times before, and you've succeeded on one side and you've failed miserably on the other. So just don't mess this up. And if you're from the future, the Switch Pro is great. Hell yes. I mean, that's awesome. I mean, I got my hands on one too, so yes. And I'm wrong about this whole situation. That's phenomenal. But technically I'm not, because I'm also, saying that, it's probably because they learn from their mistakes on the console side, and they definitely lean on their, ideals from the handheld side. So that'd be great and cool and everything, but just... My main thing that I actually would love for them to do is just create a brand new console dock. If you can connect this thing and it just up-reses to 4K graphics, that's great. Obviously, I will get the screen with the OLED because I love OLED screens, but it's just... They should find a way where it's, perfect. Just a good upgrade to the same thing, not just ruin things and make things harder to, to play on this thing. Just make it easier for the consumer. Because we've seen how bad you can mess up Nintendo. And yeah, let's just hope, at least if you're from the future, you already know, but let's just, me past self, I'm hoping that this thing, or at least the Pro, ends up good, because you guys can mess it up. But yeah, this whole video was a ramble. I know, it's a whole rant. I know. I just wanted to talk about, Nintendo's history. I just wanted to talk about, their upgrades and all that stuff. I just wanted to talk about this because people are overhyping the hell out of the Switch Pro. Like, holy shit, this is going to be great. This is going to be phenomenal. Calm down. This is Nintendo we're talking about. If this was, Sony or freaking Xbox, hell yeah, dude, it's going to be an upgrade. It's standard with them. Nintendo does weird things. They will find a way to mess this up, whether it be, the battery life's terrible on the OLED screen. Oh my god, all this I just don't know. I don't know. With Nintendo, I don't know. Especially when the console is on both sides of your freaking track record. I don't know. And that's why just keep your expectations, nominal, regular, and low. Because if this thing fails, you'll know why. But if it also succeeds, you'll also know why. It's just... bring the hype down. Just a little bit. But yeah, that's pretty much it. But yeah, that's the video. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. And yes, please comment. I'd love to hear you guys, your opinions on this, or your opinions on the Switch Pro, Nintendo's track record, or just the future. Because Nintendo, as much as I love you, and I really do love you, obviously, because I got so many freaking consoles, you're weird. You're freaking weird. I don't know if I can trust you, but at the same time, I love you. It's just weird. Well, see you guys later.